everyone, and welcome once again to the Open Mic, the show where every week I talk to writers, editors, agents, and others in the publishing game to learn about them, their work, and everything that they do in the publishing world. The show is available by the same name on both YouTube and via all of the major podcast platforms, and you can subscribe to either or to both so you never miss a thing. I am your host, Rich Eisen, and my guest today has to have one of the most varied, eclectic resumes of anyone I have ever had on this show. He is, and I hope I don't miss anything here, because he is an author, a filmmaker, an actor, a composer, an educator, a public speaker, a consultant, a reviewer, a writer in residence. He's a CEO, and he's a columnist with Writer's Digest magazine. And most important for our purposes today, Clay Stafford is the founder and the current operator of the Killer Nashville International Writers Conference, which this year will be held August 22nd through the 25th, of course, in Music City, USA, Nashville. Clay is also the publisher and editor-in-chief of Killer Nashville magazine, which if you haven't come across, you really should check out. It is a font of information and entertainment for those of us in the writing gig. And somewhere in there, he's also managed to sell a whole heck of a lot of books. So, Clay Stafford, welcome to the Open Mic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. The pleasure is definitely all mine. I want to get into some of your backstory here in just a bit, but I wanted to start out, of course, with the conference, because, like I say, it's coming up in August. This is the 19th year for Killer Nashville. Tell me a bit about how all this got started and how somebody like you with so many irons and so many fires already, how did you decide you wanted to take on the Herculean task of starting and running a writers conference?
You know, it really started as a whim in a way of getting friends together, because we had everybody was meeting at conferences and stuff, and at the time I had a small child, and travel had kind of dried up a lot for me just because of my obligations, and then everybody was like, come to New York, come to Los Angeles, come to wherever it happened to be. And I was like, finally, why don't you guys just come here? Let's set a weekend and you guys come here. So we set that up, and Carol Higgins Clark came as our guest of honor that year. And just about 70 people showed up, and we just had a intimate but great party together at the hotel. At that time, I was having everybody over at my house for a reception dinner, but we've obviously grown since then, and the house won't hold all the people, but it has grown. Since then, and I had been involved with several writers conferences prior to this, and the internet world was opening up, and I really enjoy people, and I really enjoy getting to know people. And I thought, well, why can't we just do something that's international? So from the very beginning, we started with an international thing, and this year we've got people again coming from the British Isles, Germany, Australia, all over, and it's just a great way for us to get to know people, and that's really what it's all about: gaining relationships, gaining friends, having fun, and so that's how it began, and it just grew.
Well, and for anyone now, full disclosure, I have not been to the Killer Nashville conference. My current manuscript that my agent is out there trying to get sold right now was a finalist for a Claymore Award last year. So that I really want to encourage folks. Like I say, full disclosure that I have not been there. Many of my friends have, and they speak glowingly of what a great time Killer Nashville is. I'm clearly very appreciative of the consideration for my work. And Nashville is just a lovely city. I've been a few times for various other things, and it is just a lovely location in the world. So if you haven't been, I highly recommend it. You know, how you've noted that there's this evolution. Maybe tell me a little bit more about that evolution. How much larger has it actually become? Because before we came on the air, we were talking about maybe the differences between, a conference like Left Coast or Killer Nashville and something like International Thriller Writers or BoucherCon, which are gigantic and almost overwhelming in how big they are. Tell me a little bit about how Killer Nashville has evolved, and maybe what's the, for lack of a better term, or maybe the appropriate term for a mystery crime fiction, the body count for Killer Nashville.
We have evolved in terms of our curriculum based upon the industry that's evolved because as you know, things are changing rapidly in the industry. And so our curriculum has evolved that way in terms of, and I think that we have a full range of people who attend the conference, people who are just starting out with an idea and want to maybe get published and been thinking about it for years, all the way through New York Times bestselling authors who come every year to take advantage of the marketing and promotion sessions that we've got in order to be able to go further. So we try to cover all aspects of the industry, and I think we I rely a lot on the feedback from people who've been there, and they say, I wish you would do something on this. And then next year, guaranteed, we'll do something on that in order to. So that's the way the curriculum has evolved. In terms of, uh, we try to keep it intimate. I think maybe your friends that have come talk about, I hope they talk about how there's an intimacy at Killer Nashville. And I purposely have capped that at 400. So that's the max. And every year we turn people away. And, you hate to turn people away, but at the same time, I don't want to lose ever the flavor of that original year when we started back in 2006, when it was a group of friends gathering together. That's what I want it to continue to be. So 400 is the max. However, we had about 600 people come through the door last year in terms of coming to the awards presentation and stuff like that. But in terms of people who are enrolled in the conference itself, the max is 400.
Is this how you envisioned it evolving over this time, or are you surprised at all at how popular the conference has been and that you would get to the point where you would have to turn people away?
Completely surprised. It was not. I had no idea that we would grow. I had no idea that we would eventually decide to do a free magazine to try to, help encourage writers. I had no idea that we were going to start giving awards and recognition. And then I see people, you talked about the Claymore, that's for the first 50 unpublished pages of a manuscript at the time of submission. And I've seen the Claymore open doors for people. And I think I was at an event last night, and someone said, what is probably the biggest thing that you've enjoyed doing? And I feel like I've had a wonderful life, and I've gotten to do a lot of things that I wanted to do. And so for me, at this stage of my life, I can tell you that on numerous occasions, from across the room, across the lobby, coming down the escalator, I've had authors go, they want my manuscript. They want my manuscript. And for me, that's probably the highlight, because I remember those moments when they wanted my manuscript and how excited and shocked I was at that moment. And I think that that's probably the highlight of some of, professionally what I do now. And so that even surprises me that we've been able to touch so many people. We've been able to, we had one person enter the Claymore, and they ended up, he had, no kidding. He told me he had this manuscript in the drawer for 13 years. And finally, someone said about the Claymore Award. So he decided to submit it to the Claymore. From the Claymore, he was able to get an agent through Killer Nashville. He was able to get a publisher through Killer Nashville, and he was able to get a movie deal through Killer Nashville. And so all of that put together, seeing these lives changed is probably, I'm thinking, legacy, is it something that I've written? Is it something, well, I'm a people person. So for me, I think it's the people that we've been able to touch throughout the years that's made the difference. And maybe that's why we've grown and surprised me because it's all about the attendees. Excuse me, it's pollen season here in Tennessee, and but it's all about the attendees, and I think that it's really the attendees that make Killer Nashville what it is, and it's the synergy that's developed there. And every year is brand new, and every year does surprise me, and it continues to surprise me. And I wonder, 10 years from now, where will we be?
Right. Well, I was going to ask maybe what were the best and worst parts of putting on a conference like this. I think you really just very eloquently described the best parts. Is there a worst part of doing this? Is it maybe having to turn people away, or is there some other part of it that's tough for you every year? You go, but I got to
Well,
do it.
yeah, and probably the only thing is that turning people away would probably you put words in my mouth here, but that's probably the worst thing. I've been a producer and a film producer, television producer, and a book packager, and all sorts of other things, and so putting together projects is what I've always done. So for me, it's fun. It's building something, and so it's all great. So there's no downside on that. So I can't think of a downside. I really do love the people who come to this conference, and I love the conference itself. And so everything, to be trite, but everything is really a work of love to be able to put it together. And I feel so fortunate, and I can't overemphasize that enough, how fortunate I am to be where I can interact with all of these people who are coming in.
Yeah, what a fabulous feeling that must be, to be able to look forward to that every year. You have probably seen a million manuscripts, probably literally a million manuscripts over these last almost 2 decades. Have you got to a point where you know pretty quickly when something is going to be really good or break big? I guess, in short, what makes for a great story, regardless of where it falls on the genre spectrum, from mystery, crime fiction, thriller, suspense, what have you? What makes for a really great story from your perspective?
I think there are two things. One is, first of all, and this is silly, but it's true, because as you say, I have seen a lot of manuscripts, but the first thing is just learn how to write. Because you would be amazed at people that turn in their first draft of their very first story as something that is a completed work. And as you well know, it's rewrite, 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 and then finally you come to the conclusion, or I did, that one just really doesn't deserve to see the light of day anyway. So let's go to the next one, and you write and write and rewrite and rewrite, and then come to the same conclusion until you finally find something that you think, this thing actually reads, I think, well, and you have your friends read it and it reads well. And if you're with a writers group or something and they encourage you and it reads well, then maybe that's the time to start submitting it. So that's number one. And that's just the basics. But then in terms of what's the other thing, I think it's voice. I really do. I think it's the way the writer looks at the world, not imitating any other writer at all, but looking into a world that only they know, and a background that only they have experienced, and bringing that in, and then plotting it out with a good beginning, middle, and end makes all the difference. But I think it comes down, and even that plotting out in the beginning, middle, and end comes down to the voice, the way the author wants to tell that story. And I really think, without doubt, voice is the key once you've learned the basics.
Yeah, I know as a reader, I absolutely agree with you, that is, and it's also the hardest thing I think for a lot of writers to get into, for with you, because it is so true. I defy anyone out there who's been writing for a long time to deny that they have submitted something, short story, novel, play something, whatever, before it was ready, thinking it was. Because that is one thing you learn. And if you're in this any length of time, is that whatever that first thing you wrote, it's probably a piece of crap. You think it's brilliant, but it's probably really not very good. And if you look at it down the road, you're going to go, oh my God, why did I let other people see that? So that's a really great point about it. Yeah, what do you want most for writers, regardless of their career level or status right now, to take away from their interactions with Killer Nashville, be it with the conference or the magazine or anything else that you do? Is there something that you really hope the people who interact with your program and organization take away from this experience?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down. It's very simple for me. I just hope that, as I said, I've gotten to do a lot of things myself that I never thought I would be able to do, and to work with a lot of people that I've never been able to work with. And I really think, let's just say we go through this life one time, and in that one time that we go through, I would wish for everyone to be able to live their dreams, to have the experiences that they want to have on whatever level that happens to be. And I would hope that through the information that we give through Killer Nashville and through Killer Nashville magazine, and my personal blog posts and stuff like that, that they come away with a realistic expectation of what it's all about. Because I think a lot of writers have ideas of the grandeur of writing, and well about the grandeur of writing, correct?
Oh
So,
my.
so,
Yes.
so I see that, and I think, be realistic, but also, enjoy what you're doing, and just realize the blessings, frankly, of the fact that you get to do what you do, just doing it, not necessarily the accolades, not necessarily the sales. But for me, writing is cathartic. For me, writing is creative and exploratory. And for me, writing is the end game. And then publishing or people reading is something that comes after that. But really, I hope that people would find the enjoyment just in that process itself, because once you go into that zone, it's addictive and you never want to leave it. And I wish that for everyone.
Yeah, there's very few endeavors in life where we get to create an entire world of our own choosing and be, relatively omnipotent in how it goes, at least until our editors get at it. Um, so the publishing industry, as we noted, has changed a lot over the last 20 years. Um, do you think things are better, worse, or the same basically now for writers than they were before Killer Nashville started?
For me, I think you're going to get personality traits when you ask that question. And for me, I'm the class optimist. And I tend to think that this is we are in a wonderful time uh, for people who wanted limited distribution, for example, and wanted to self-publish. I mean, that opened up, because there's a lot of people that I meet that just want to publish for family and friends. They really don't want to do something more. And here's an opportunity for them to be able to do that, to be able to electronically read a book, as well as, and no matter where you are, you can find that book and read it. I forgot to put the hard copy in my suitcase, but I wanted to read that. You can download it. I mean, everything about where we are right now, I think, for me, is great. So I know that I know we talk about it. Let's talk about, the changes coming in the future. I get asked a lot about AI. How is that going to affect writers? Well, AI, I've explored some of the AI things out there to be able to write, my personal blogs. And can I put a plug in for that? If you'd like to get,
Oh, please.
uh, go to claystafford.com and sign up for the newsletter, and I send marketing and writing tips out every week to people who are subscribers on that. But I looked at some of the AI stuff, and they cannot match the voice they cannot match the voice. And everything that I've read, I've put some long versions in. I'm like I type in like, I want to write a story about so and so, and it comes and it's just so dry and it's so predictable, and it follows along perfectly on some sort of beat program, if you wanted to write by beats or formula. But that's not the way it's done when you've got that authentic voice coming out. So what does AI do? Well, the good thing is it kind of catches, even in like a word program, it catches when I should have used is rather than were, and helps me not be such an idiot when in terms of grammar and things like that. And so I think that it's just all in how things are used and how you look at it. But I don't really think, I think AI is great for helping us, look and edit our manuscripts and proof stuff before we send it out. I found, AI works even great for being like a copy editor, doing some
Mhm.
of the copy editing jobs before you send it to the real copy editor. But even then, the copy editor finds plenty of stuff to be able to
Yeah.
mark up, and so I think everything that happens in the industry right now, I love, and I think that if we look at it right and use it as a tool rather than feeling threatened by it,
Right.
I think we're in a wonderful spot. So started 20 years ago. And it's just over the course of these past 20 years, I've just seen things open up for writers that were not available for. And distribution, I mean, you can go worldwide now. You can market. Used to be when we started in 2006, marketing was in the hands of the publishing company itself. Now writers have so many things that they can do. They can do podcasts and stuff like you're doing right here.
Mhm.
There's so many ways to reach people. So I think we're in a wonderful age, an absolutely wonderful age.
I actually really appreciate that perspective, and I think writers need to hear that more often because I do think sometimes we get caught in these do loops of negativity, and I sometimes because of the things I do, people will ask me about writing, and the thing I always tell them is, look, the number one thing that I have learned, believe me, I did not know this going in, but the thing I've learned is that you have to know what you want and what you are going to be happy with, and if you will only be happy with a New York agent and a Big Five contract, great. Very hard to do. But if you can do that and that's what will make you happy, then great. Dedicate yourself to that. If, as you noted, you really want something that's limited distribution, maybe you don't care, about any of those other things, great too. That opportunity is there. I think that the lay of the land has never been better to do the thing you want to do that will make you happy than it is now. And I really appreciate you sharing that with folks, that perspective, because I feel that way myself. So we're definitely on the same page there. Um, though, like I say, it's so easy when you hear, oh, all the contraction and there's so few editors and agents now, and yeah, but self-publishing is so much more respectable and respected, and indie publishing and small houses, there's so much opportunity there. It's a little harder maybe for us to find it, but it is there if you're willing to put that time and effort in. So that's a great message for people. Um, what I guess I noted in this intro that you have had an extraordinarily eclectic career, which is really impressive, to say the least. And the thing I find the most interesting here is you actually started out as an actor. So tell me how about your personal evolution. How did you go from being a young aspiring actor to being where you're at today?
Well, I mean, it was just one thing led to the next. I started out as a kid actor, and so I was actually getting paid when I was 10 to act, and then I also was everything I've done. If you look at all of those things there, it all comes down to stories, telling someone a story. And that's the common theme that runs through it. Even when I'm editing, when I'm publishing, when I'm whatever I'm doing in that job capacity, producing something, it's helping to tell that story. And so for me, it's all about storytelling. So the evolution has in some ways never changed because I'm still a 10-year-old kid, with an 8 millimeter camera and a old manual typewriter that I go one finger at a time clicking on. And I also when I when I found that I was really dedicated to what I was doing, and I had a lot of people. I feel like a blundering idiot throughout my entire life, and I'm not kidding, because I stumble into relationships with people who go, "Hey, would you like to do this? Hey, would you like to do that?" And for example, how did I really get behind the screen on things? I was working as an actor in Los Angeles, and when I'd come in off the road, because I was with touring companies as well, and when I'd come in off the road, I had a temporary agency, and I could type, because when I was in high school, I decided I wanted to be either Woodward or Bernstein. If anybody listening knows who they were, because I thought I'm going to be a journalist. That's what I'm going to do. I was acting and making money and stuff, but what I really wanted to do was be a journalist like Woodward or Bernstein. And I wasn't sure which, and couldn't tell you which one was what now. Anyway, but I took typing class, and found I was the only guy in the typing class. So I took it again for the second year. And so I was an excellent typist, because me and a room full of young ladies, it was delightful to be, to spend my hour doing that in high school. So I was an excellent typist. So when I'd come off the road, I had a temporary agency, and I would go work doing typing, reception type stuff, because I've got to stay busy. I've just, my personality, I have to stay busy. You can look at my eclectic stuff, and you can see I have to stay busy. I can't slow down. So somebody said, "Would you like to go to Universal Studios and work?" Well, for an actor, what do you say to that? Absolutely. I'll get to go over there and work with that. But I go over there, and with the idea that I'm going to, infiltrate the casting department and get to know all the casting directors, and then I'm going to do this. Well, what I found, actually, somebody said, "Would you like to be a golf cart driver," basically, for Lou Wasserman, who happened to be the head of Universal Studios. And I said, sure, I'll do that. And not really knowing who Lou Wasserman was. And then Lou Wasserman, I'm driving him around, and we're going to talk to Robert Redford and all of these other big guys there. And I'm just sitting, and I'd go over, I'd put my head down. He said, just pretend you're not there. Like, how little kids shut their eyes, and you can't find them because they shut their eyes. Lou was, "Put your head down and just stand there, and you'll tend to just kind of fade away." And so he said, "Why are you working on the front of the camera? Why don't you get behind the camera?" And so he became a mentor to me, and other people became a mentor. And there's some, people I worked with at Universal that were strong mentors with me. And then it's just continued on. And it was like one door, you just throw yourself out there, and one door opens up after another. And opportunities come that you didn't know were going to be there. And I think it all comes down to that trite phrase, to say yes to life, and jump in and just see where you swim to. And there's a lot of people who, if you're actually treading along in the water, it's amazing to me. And I think that, going back to Killer Nashville, you see the same thing there. It's amazing to me, the people who reach out a hand and say, "Hey, let me pull you out of the water, because you're kind of a stupid kid, but I think you got something to offer." And throughout my entire life, that's really been the progression and trajectory. I stumbled just because I took advantage of opportunities, because I threw myself out there, because I allowed myself to be stupid. I allowed myself to fail. I didn't feel like it was a reflection on me at all when you said that first draft was really bad. It's not, it's a reflection of where I am at the time, and that's okay. And I think that if everybody just threw themselves out like that, then they would find all sorts of doors opening to them. And that's basically how my career trajectory has gone.
There's a Zelig-like quality to that, but I love the way you framed it, because and for anyone who's not familiar with that term, there was a Woody Allen character from a movie back in the 70s, where this Zelig kept showing up in all of the most amazing situations, kind of like Forrest Gump years later, where he just finds himself in all these incredible situations. But I think the connective tissue there between those fictional characters and what you just described is attitude. Just having a willingness to embrace the things that come your way with a good attitude and trying to make them make the most of those opportunities and having fun with it and being excited about it and enthusiastic about it, because then people want to be around you more. And then, hey, then they introduce you to this next thing because look, man, that Clay guy, he can do this. He's great at this. So I love that perspective, actually. I think it's a great thing for, we writers or creatives to remember, because it's so hard. There's so much rejection here. Well, that's part of it too, right? That's all part of embracing the whole package.
Yeah, let me tell you this an interesting story. One of our agents this past year was an agent that many years ago, and I'm talking many years ago, rejected me. And he was kind enough to call me on the phone to politely tell me how bad my writing was and that I wasn't quite ready for prime time. And it was one of the most informative conversations that I've had. And so I invited him back. I invited him to come to Killer Nashville to take pitches, from people who were attendees, and I think he picked up a couple of people there. But when I introduced him, I said this agent rejected me, and afterwards he was like, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry that I hope I was polite. I hope I was whatever." And I said he absolutely was. But the point being, to all that, I think I was not ready at times, as we all are not ready at times for the prime time, right? And so I think being willing to throw yourself out there and know that you're not even today, really seriously. I mean, look back at what you wrote yesterday. Can't you improve on it today? And we're always at that point. And I think so many people are fearful of making fools of themselves, or in their personal opinion, making fools of themselves. They're really not. They're throwing themselves out there, and if they're throwing out the best they've got to offer, then they've got something to work with and something to move forward. And I think that's one of the hardest things for writers to do, because they feel so attached. There comes a point, and you may have reached this point too, where you realize there's a separation between you and your work.
Mm-hmm.
But when you first start out, though, it's a part of you, and people even call it my baby or something. It's like, no, it's not my baby. I have two children; those are my babies.
Right.
So it's not my baby. It's just a story. That's all it is. It's just a story, and it can be hacked and improved and thrown away or whatever it happens to be. But the important thing is we just throw it out there. And I really encourage people and encourage your listeners that if they've got that manuscript in the drawer that's been there for 13 years, take the thing out. And if it still looks good to you after 13 years, send it to somebody. And if you're rejected, it doesn't matter. Somebody else, the 100th agent, as I tell people, that looks at it is going to love it, J.K. Rowling, and then we'll see what comes from that. But you gotta throw it out there.
Yeah, and John Grisham and so many others. All that being said, is there anything in this long eclectic career of yours that you wish you could have a do-over on?
I wish that life did not tick by, because I actually really enjoy what I'm doing. And, every day goes by as another day cashed. And if could change anything, then I would say if I could find that elixir of immortality, then I would happily drink it, because I love what I'm doing and I'm excited about what I'm doing. And I've got so many things that I want to achieve in the future that if there was one thing I could change, it would be to find earthly immortality to be able to continue forward. But no, in terms of accidents, I really think even the things that I did not do well at, the things that I didn't perform well at, all taught me. And I would not go back and change anything, because what I went through, good and bad, brought me to this position of where I am right now. And I some of my best experiences have been times when I have failed, and been able to learn from those experiences. So even the failures, no, I absolutely would not change a thing.
You've been really successful yourself, but you've also worked with a lot of successful people. across many facets of entertainment and business, of course, publishing. And uh, what traits have you gleaned? And I'm sure there's many more than one, but maybe the primary traits that you have gleaned either through your own experiences or those you've seen from others that you've worked with, do you think are the most important for an aspiring writer to maybe seek to emulate or at least to keep in mind as they move forward on their own writing journey?
I really think it's like anything, and I encourage. I'm not one for the muse, and I encourage everybody to write every single day because it's a skill, just like any other skill. It's a skill like baseball. It's a skill like being a surgeon. It's a skill and something that they need to do every day. And if and I and I've and I've I would think also if you don't feel like you can sit down and write, I feel compulsive, and there's also that I've got to do it, and I know some other writers who feel the same way that you've got to do it, and you just kind of feel bad at the end of the day if you don't get to write at least a few words anyway, even if not your quota. You feel like you have to do it, and so I think the most important thing is to take each day, no matter what your endeavor, take each day and lay that one brick, and then come back the next day and lay that next brick, and do that consistently. And before you know it, you've built, as you said when you were talking about being the big writer or the whatever writer, you can build yourself a nice comfortable house. You can build yourself an overflowing mansion. You can do whatever you want to do, but you come at it every single day putting brick, brick, brick. And that's just, no matter what your goal, if you're a writer or you're anything else, it's just daily laying the brick that goes in that direction.
Right. I have read where you've talked about being, and this is your word, delighted at to always start from the bottom. Would you expound on that a bit for me? What do you mean by being delighted to start at the bottom?
I have worked, as a matter of fact, I'm just writing a blog right now before our meeting about one of the things about starting at the bottom, and I had some experiences in the very beginning where I literally told, I'd find a director and I would say, "Hey, I'm wanting to be a director myself, and and he says, "Well, I don't have a job. I don't have anything." I said, I work for free." And so literally I wrote in my blog just this morning. I said, I have worked for food off the food truck, just to be able to be around somebody that I can learn from. And so I really think that just throwing that out, and getting out there at that bottom stage and working your way up. There's a really huge agency, talent agency, and they don't do it anymore. And I think they should have. And they actually asked me earlier in my career if I wanted to become a part of it. But this talent agency started everyone. It didn't matter if you came in with a law degree or you came in with an MFA or you came in whatever. They started you literally in the mailroom, and you worked your way up, and you got to see everything that took place, and the education in that uh, was amazing. And I have always delighted. I think we're more comfortable if we do start at the bottom. I think that we always have some place to grow. If we come in expecting to start at the top, I think we've reached our peak right before we ever start, right? So I will reiterate again, I am always delighted to start at the bottom, because that means I'm learning, I'm pushing myself, I'm exploring, and I'm headed towards something. And all of that just gives me great joy.
Only one way up from the bottom, right? Only one
Right.
direction, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
But I guess unless you start digging, we've all seen that person too. Usually that
I,
starts,
I
with
felt I have dug a few times as well.
well, so maybe the last serious question here. I grew up as a tremendous Elton John fan. I still am.
Hmm.
But I discovered Elton John. I had the benefit of having a sister who was 7 years older than me, so I discovered Elton John when I was still in grade school because of her and her friends. And so I've been a lifelong Elton John fan. And I understand that he invited you to dinner once. So aside now, if you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing me turn green with envy. Tell me a little bit about that experience. Did you accept, and what was that experience
Uh,
like to go to dinner with Sir Elton?
I hate to name drop, but but I will answer the question. But I was
Please name drop here. I have to do it once in a while too. It is, you're in a safe space for that. Please go right ahead.
okay. We happen to have the same agent. I mean, yeah, the same agent. I'm sorry, the same attorney out of Los Angeles. And we were both in New York at the same time. And when I was growing up, I had three people that I really wanted to emulate. One was Steven Spielberg, one was Stephen King, and the other was Elton John. And from my background, I'm involved in music, I'm involved in film, and I'm involved in literature. So all of those guys heavily influenced the direction of my life and trajectory. Now, I grew up in an Appalachian environment. I know you've probably seen that, and there was no way I would ever be able to meet them or do anything like that. Well, come to find out, throwing myself out there, I did work for Steven Spielberg. Did promotion for Stephen King. I then in New York, when I was there, got an opportunity to go to dinner with Sir Elton. And looking at priorities, um, when I went to New York, I had my little son was just upset tremendously that I was leaving, and I said, you know what, I will be back on Sunday. When you get out of church, when you walk out the door, you will see me leaning like James Dean. I didn't say that, but leaning like James Dean against my car. And so I had a dinner engagement to go with Sir Elton on Saturday, but he had to cancel and move it to Sunday. So I was at a point where I decided I had to decide one thing or another. And so I got on that plane and I came back and I was standing there when that little boy walked out of church. And so I did not have dinner with Sir Elton. I have said that we could probably arrange that sometime if we wanted to. And I was a big Elton fan myself, just like you. But I realized at that point that I had also grown to the point that it was all about just the work itself. It was all just about writing. It was all just about what I was expressing. And before you've got your following, and I think maybe some of your listeners out there are following. They want to be like the next so and so, the next so and so. And I think it was really not having dinner with Sir Elton was a nod to me that I had grown to the point that I had grown into my own voice, that I had grown into my own self and my own priorities. And I was no longer, I was Thoreau. I was no longer, I was beating to the beat of my own drummer at that time. And so it was anticlimactic, but I can tell you the joy on that little boy's face will be something that I will always remember.
Well, I commend you as a parent. I commend you wholeheartedly for that decision. I can only imagine how difficult that had to have been.
It was
Oh my.
being a big fan, and I mean, I had seen him numerous times in concert and everything, and they were shooting a documentary on him. They were talking. I can't remember the. It was a tribute to somebody, and he was in the documentary talking about it. So we were all in New York, and it was, yes, it was a big decision. But as a parent, and what's important to me, uh, it wasn't a hard decision
Yeah.
because I knew what I had promised that little boy.
Yeah. Well, kudos. I'm sure he'll remember that his whole life too. Actually, I do have one other serious question. Because I really feel like I'd be remiss if I did not mention the significant number of Killer Nashville's charitable efforts. They range from supporting literacy groups and schools, and even helping to fund the building of a library in Africa. Tell me a little bit more about these efforts and why they're such a key part of the Killer Nashville program.
Well, again, everything that has happened to me, I think, has happened because someone extended a hand. And I just feel incredible gratitude. And I feel gratitude for life, just for life itself. And I have had so many wonderful experiences. And I just think that you get to a point where with that fulfilled life, and I there were times, as you probably know, that I thought I was going to get thrown out of my apartment because I had no money, or I was sleeping in my car in those early days. And it was a journey that I wanted to take. And then I got to work with all the people that I got to work with and do what I wanted to do and experience the things that I experienced. And I thought, everybody should have that opportunity to do that. And so the charitable outreach has always been a part of Killer Nashville. If you come to Killer Nashville, you agree by coming to Killer Nashville, especially if you're one of the guest speakers and stuff, that you share your business card, you share your email, you share your phone numbers, you become a mentor to these people who are coming in. That's the backbone of Killer Nashville, becoming a mentor to this new generation coming in, because their voice needs to be heard. And you've gone through it, you've experienced it, and you've got the opportunity to help that next generation. And I think it falls on people who've had success to be able to do that. And so just the basics of, like we were talking about Malawi, Africa, just the basics of children being able to hear stories, because every story expands your mind and expands who you are and helps you realize who you could be. And so everything we do is an outreach, whether it's the conference itself or the charities that we support or whatever we happen to do. It's reaching out to help people find that potential that they want, and are looking for, and it's hiding within them. And a lot of times there's many voices that don't get to be heard in many fields, not just literature, but in many fields, because they don't realize that it's a possibility. So what we try to do is make sure that everybody knows, from children to even seniors, that there are possibilities out there for even more of what you might want to do with your life while you're living it, and live it while you're living it.
Wow, that's great. Well, I always like to close the show on a multiple choice question. It's meant to be fun. I hope it is. I have a theme for every one of these. It's, a theme of crafted to the person I'm talking to. Regular listeners know that what I'm going to do is offer you a choice of three people. uh, let's just say I'm the omnipotent one who can put you together with one of these three people. Who would you choose to spend some time with, and why? The options I'm going to give you, and you'll probably pick up the theme pretty quickly, but the options I'm going to give you are the great Loretta Lynn, uh, uh, former President Woodrow Wilson, or Sergeant Alvin York. One of those
Okay.
three people I could put you together with to hang out with for a bit. Who would you choose and why?
I think I would probably choose Loretta. And the reason that I would say that is because uh, I have an affinity with her background. I have an affinity with where she came from. I was just at an event last night, and someone was talking to me, and they told me where they were from. And I'm not going to say, but where they were from. And I said, I immediately know your story. And I felt an affinity. And I think if I were going to go sit and have dinner with one of those three, probably Loretta would have been the one that I would go feel that I would have a wonderful evening sharing stories, sharing connections, and talking about the trajectory of her life, and then reflecting on the trajectory of my own.
Well, I love that choice. She was a fascinating, fascinating person. I highly recommend if you don't know whether you're a country music fan or not, her life was, and a lot of people, certainly my age, have seen Coal Miner's Daughter, but God, her story is so much more than Coal Miner's Daughter. The from the early stages of her career and so just what she was like as a person, as a woman, as a parent. I mean, she as an icon,
And the
just a,
ups and downs in her life as well,
absolutely.
and how she coped with those ups and downs with a sense of optimism, a sense of hope, a sense of pushing forward, a sense of never giving up. I mean, she was an inspiration.
Oh, and her sense of humor was really something. I've seen her. Well, and I'd kind of forgotten until I was putting all this together. I actually saw her perform one time, I was in Kentucky, and she was on a bill with Ashley Judd and Patty Loveless, and I was there for work, but it was close by. I went to see it, and I will never really forget it because it was fabulous. Got to see Loretta Lynn perform one time. If you haven't got the connection, all three of those people, Woodrow Wilson, Alvin York, and Loretta Lynn, are all children of the Appalachians, and so is my guest today. Clay Stafford. I cannot say thank you enough. Really appreciate you coming on the show today. I will reiterate too, if you haven't been to Killer Nashville, like me, full disclosure, but I'm gonna get there because everything I know about this conference is nothing but positives. Um, hey, I've
And
really learned a lot today. I really
oh,
appreciate your
great.
perspectives.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, I in my blogs I do a lot of reflecting on the right choices and the wrong choices I've made, similar to what we've talked about here. And I take a particular subject and write most days. And so if listeners really want to kind of like get a edge on the learning curve, like what did the village idiot do wrong? I'm more than happy to share that in my blogs, and so if they want to sign up for the newsletter, just go to my site, claystafford.com.
Absolutely, yes. Playstafford.com for sure, which will be, if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be on the screen in front of you as we're saying these words right now. The Killer Nashville site is a font of information. Killer Nashville magazine, tremendous resource for
Yeah, and
writers,
it's
really, whatever stage.
free, and it's free.
It's
Point that
free.
out as well. It's free. It's just a continual thing of giving back, and I can't thank the writers enough of Killer Nashville magazine who donate their stories and their articles, their craft articles, and everything to help other writers become much better. And so I found it with Killer Nashville. I found, if I can just take a moment to say this,
Please.
sometimes the people who really need to be at some of these events are not the people that can afford them. And we never want that to happen. So somebody said, I thought we'll do a magazine, and they said, well, okay, what would we charge for the subscription of this? Said, we're not charging anything because the people who need it probably may not have the money to be able to get it. I want to be able to access. They said, do you want to do it in print or digital? And I said, print is limited. Digital is everywhere. It's worldwide. We can touch people's lives all around. So it's free. Go to killernashville.com and sign up for the Killer Nashville magazine.
I could not agree more. I think it's a great resource. I read it every time I get it. I read it in totality. I think it's a great resource, and I want to agree with you too. People ask me all the time about advertising and things like that for this podcast slash YouTube show, and I've never done it. I don't want to. There are very few things you do in life simply because you really enjoy them. Those of you who are regular, in my regular audience, I'm a reporter and editor by trade. I'm a very busy guy, like most of us that are still working. And sometimes it takes a little effort to squeeze this into my schedule, and I have never regretted 1 second of it. This is by far in the top two or three things of fun things I do in my life, aside from, hanging out with my wife and being backpacking and my dogs and stuff. But I love doing this. I really think, believe, hope that it provides a great font of information as well for aspiring authors to hear from people like Clay and so many of my guests that come on. And I don't want people to have to pay for that or endure advertising for that. I don't look. I'm doing okay in life. I don't need the money. So if you have an opportunity to share this show or any other show or the information about Killer Nashville, please do that. Help somebody out. I mean, it's one of the things that we talked about a lot at Left Coast Crime this last weekend, how collegial and welcoming the writing community is toward one another. And I hope we never lose that, especially in the crime fiction world. I just hope we never lose it because it is one of the things that makes it such an enjoyable thing to be part of. So I really hope we never ever lose that collegiality because it's such a wonderful thing to have in your life. Clay Stafford, thank you so much. I really, like I said, I can't say thank you enough. This has been very enlightening and entertaining for me. Appreciate you coming on. I will remind folks, if you haven't done so, please subscribe. You can subscribe on both YouTube and on whatever podcast platform you are listening to. I will also say, if you'd be so kind as to leave a nice review, 5 stars, that good stuff that helps other people find the show. I really appreciate that. And then the last thing, it's the same thing I say every week, but I mean it every time. Tomorrow is not promised to any of us. So please, whatever you're doing, make today count. Again, for my guest, Clay Stafford, for Killer Nashville, for myself, Rich Eisen, this has been the Open Mic Writers in Their Own Words. I'll see you next time.